I noticed something really interesting about TERASTAL and, by default, TERAPAGOS and maybe even GLIMMORA, and, well, yeah, I gotta talk about that. Welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're talking about the potential origins of the TERASTAL phenomenon, TERAPAGOS, and even GLIMMORA, potentially. And that is that they're from space, which is a little boring, to be honest, because Pokemon tends to do this a lot with their third legendaries. You know, like, you have Necrozmas from Ultra Space, but then you even have Pokemon like Rayquaza, Eternatus, both of which actually live in space. So it's a little basic, but it does all make sense. So first off, the thing that made me realize this was, if you look at where the Terastal phenomenon seems to be stemming from in both the Paldea and Kitakami regions, it seems to be stemming from Area 0 and the Crystal Pools, respectively. And if you look at Area 0 is a giant crater. It's inside the crater of Paldea, which is a giant crater likely created by a meteorite. If you look over at the Crystal Pool, while it's never stated to be a crater, it seems to also be a crater. It has the appearance of a crater. And, you know, you can even kind of pick up that Terastal shards. Terra shards are only found in these areas. The Pokemon GLIMMORA is only found in these areas. You can, granted, find Glimmet in some other caves in Paldea, but I would make the argument that that's perhaps because Glimmet's been here a while and has branched out to them. But I do think Glimmet and GLIMMORA are tied to the Terastal phenomenon just because they appear in those places where you can find Terra shards, and they also, you know, attention is brought to that in the Pokedex, that they seem to resemble Terra shards. But the Terastal phenomenon is created by Terapagos, so this would mean that Terapagos, too, is from space, and I think that's exactly that Terapagos is indeed from space. I think that perhaps, if you look at the anime, you can see that Terapagos comes from the little jewel that is on Liko's pendant. I imagine that those jewels just are carried in meteorites, and that's how Terapagos got here, and then he went on to create the Terastal phenomenon. And GLIMMORA might just be like a connected Pokemon to Terapagos, where it's, you know, it's not related to it directly, but it just kind of is connected to it by nature. This also really makes sense when you look at other gimmicks. So far, we have had 4 gimmicks in the Pokemon world. That is Mega Evolution, Z-Moves, Dynamax or Gigantamax, and now Terastal. And basically, the first 3 seem to revolve around Infinity Energy. In fact, Mega Evolution and Z-Moves are confirmed to do this. And again, where do these come from? They come from space. It's said that Mega Evolution stones are formed from meteorites that fall to Earth. It is, you know, shown that Z crystals are connected to Ultra Necrozma. They're like shards of Necrozma. It is stated that Dynamax comes from Eternatus. Again, a Pokemon that lives in space. And all of these things are basically mutations of Pokemon, right? That's what these things are. They are exactly that. They are mutations of a Pokemon. A Pokemon cannot just naturally Mega Evolve. It needs this external thing. It cannot just use Z-Moves. It needs this external thing. In fact, the only Pokemon that seem to be capable of just taking on a Mega Evolution of its own is Rayquaza. And again, that's a Pokemon who is connected to space and seems to live in space. Then a Pokemon that can Gigantamax on its own, that's Eternatus, again connected to space, and also he creates Dynamax energy, so he's literally just fueling himself. And then even with the Terastal phenomenon, you could say that Ogerpon can do it, and that's because he has the mask, which has Terra crystals in it, which again, by this theory, are from space. And I think that's the point. I think because these are not natural to the Pokemon, they want them to be an extraterrestrial thing. They want them to basically distort Pokemon. And you can kind of see this. Like, a lot of Mega Evolutions, a lot of Gigantamax forms seem to look very extraterrestrial, to be honest. And we know of other types of mutations that basically are connected to space. You know, Ursaluna is a Pokemon that is affected by the moon, which by the way, is in space. You also have Pokemon that evolve with evolutionary stones. The Moonstone definitely came from space, but I would even make the argument that the other stones also probably came from space. If you really, really wanted to read further into this, then, you know, you could even make the argument that Celestial, which was the song that Ed Sheeran wrote for Pokemon, and it was used as the in-credits song in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, could have been a slight tease to this, that, you know, it's all kind of connected to space. And I do think that we are going to see that pan out, and probably eventually one day, I don't think in Gen 9, but eventually one day go to outer space in a Pokemon game. You know, we've already done that in a way, but I mean, like, not just for a segment of the game, but actually be able to access an area that we can return to that would be in outer space. I think that's inevitable. Gen 10 is kind of a pivotal gen, right? So, you know, maybe that's when we'll see this happen. But either way, I do think the reveal in the Indigo Disc is going to be that this all came from up there. And that's, you know, the meteor that hit the crystal pool happened to kind of come from the same part of the universe that the meteor that hit Area Zero came from. And this brought with it Terra crystals and maybe even Terapagos, and this then, you know, just kind of branched out, and Terapagos created the Terastal phenomenon in the Paldea region, and Terapagos created the Paradox phenomenon over in the Kitakami region. You may be going, whoa, 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 but doesn't that mean there's two Terapagos? And that's exactly what I think. You know, we've talked about for a while now that there seems to be potentially a hidden fourth member of the Loyal Three, and it seems to be able to negatively influence Pokemon. I think that we're going to learn that it actually got a hold of a Terapagos that was in Kitakami, and that's going to kind of be the big bad, if you will, of the Indigo Disc. This is all speculation and not based in anything substantial, but it is something I really do think could happen. I kind of, when I think about it, I kind of relate it to how in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, you catch Giratina at Turnback Cave, but if you go to Ramanas Park, you can battle this kind of shadowy version of Giratina. I think that's a little bit like what we'll be seeing here. Either way, if we are right about this, and that the Terastal phenomenon, which we know comes from Terapagos, which would in this scenario come from space, if the Terastal phenomenon is connected to space, this seems to suggest a lot about Pokemon themselves, right? You know, it's interesting how space can influence them so much, but not the humans. You know, a human can't Mega Evolve, a human can't use a Z move. It is interesting how all that works, and there's so many Pokemon that we know for a fact come from space, and there's even viruses that can kind of become their own Pokemon, and Deoxys that, again, are virus from space. All of this seems to just point to some kind of connection with Pokemon and outer space. I don't know what that is. You could make the argument that maybe one day the world, and I think this is a pretty common fan theory to be honest, but that the world was once without Pokemon, and that they actually came from space, maybe all at once, maybe gradually, I don't know, and maybe even, you know, we're talking before humans even came about, this happened. But it's just interesting, all the ties to space, and, you know, Terapagos is very much tied to typing, so it's like, did typings come from space? Did something happen? Some, you know, the asteroid or the meteor shower, rather, that we say might have killed off the dinosaurs, was the Pokemon equivalent of that, giving all these regular, you know, still Pokemon, but without elemental powers? Did it basically provide that? I don't know. It's all wacky, but I'm really excited for the Indigo Disc to give us some more clarity. And when that happens, you know, we'll be breaking it down and what that means for the Pokemon world. Be sure to let me know what you think about this. Do you think that Terapagos, the Terastal phenomenon, the Crystal Pool, Area Zero, all of it's connected to outer space because it was hit by a meteor that would have come from there, or not? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss all our future videos. And until next time, I'll see all of you later.